Welcome back, Leo Lions. This is Mrs. Morgan with today's lesson on equations where we see a distributive property inside the equation. So solving equations using the distributive property. So first of all, just a refresher because we've talked about the distributive property in class. So don't forget that the distributive property definition states that numbers that are added or subtracted inside of parentheses, so added or subtracted, within a set of parentheses can be multiplied by a number that's outside of the parentheses. So remember, if there is a number that is right next to the parentheses, then that means multiplication. So we'll take that number outside of the parentheses and multiply it to both terms inside the parentheses. So for example, these are algebraic examples. So this A is touching the parentheses. We're going to distribute it to the B. And we're also going to distribute it to the C. So don't forget, when we do this, this means A times B. So AB is the same thing as A times B. And then A times C, so we'll write it as plus AC. Okay, and remember, these variables represent numbers. So there would be numbers in place of the A, B, and C. Okay, same thing works over here. Even though there's a minus sign in the middle, we would do A times B, AB, and then minus A times C, AC. So this is just a refresher on distributive property. Okay, the distributive property can be used to simplify algebraic expressions. So now we'll do some examples with some numbers in them. So for example, we have -4 times 2, so we get -8. And then there's an x on that 2, so -8x. Okay, now remember we talked about there's a negative sign in front of that 4, and we're distributing to a positive 3. So rather than writing this simplified expression with 2 signs in the middle, we're going to do negative times a positive, so we just write it as a minus. And then 4 times 3 is 12. Rather than saying -8x plus -12, we're going to simplify it to just have one sign in the middle there. So -8x minus 12, same thing with what we started with. Okay, same thing here. So that 5 is touching the parentheses. We do 5 times 6x, which is 30x. And then 5 times -7y, so -35y, or minus 35y, same thing. Okay, so now we're going to solve equations where all we have to do is the same thing. You want to multiply the factor that is outside of the parentheses. So multiply the factor outside the parentheses, and then we solve the equation just like we've been doing, okay? Another way, you can also divide each side by the number that is outside of the parentheses and get rid of the parentheses that way. So there's a couple different ways to solving these equations, okay? But when you use this method, you must make sure that you divide each term by that factor. So you have to make sure you divide everything that is outside of that parentheses, okay? Let's look at an example. If you notice, both of these examples are the exact same, except we're just going to do it 2 different ways, and I don't care which method you use, okay? So, for example, we see that number touching the parentheses. We're going to multiply by both terms inside. So we can simplify this to 15x plus 60, and then the 9 is outside of the parentheses. So we just write it how it is in the equation, plus 9. And that equals -36, okay? Now to solve from here, we've talked about, okay, x is on the left side, so we want to get that on the left side all by itself and get rid of all those other numbers over there, okay? Before we begin, we could add like terms. We have 2 constants here. So the 15x we can't combine with anything. We'll keep that the same, but then 60 plus 9 we can add together and rewrite the equation. Okay, once we do that, then we can solve just like our regular 2-step equation. And I'm going to move this x down, and there we go. And then we're going to keep solving here. So 69 minus 69, that goes away. We get 15x equals, now -36 minus 69, they're same signs, so we're going to add them, keep the sign. So we get -105 on the right side. Divide by 15, since that is 15 times x, so the opposite is divide. And then negative 105 divided by 15, we get x is negative 7. Okay, don't forget, we could always check our work. Go back to that original equation, 5 times 3 times negative 7 inside the parentheses, plus 12, plus 9. And we're trying to see, is it going to wind up with negative 36? Okay, parentheses first, and then order of operations inside the parentheses. So we have negative 21 plus 12 inside of there. Okay, you could use distributive property, but I'm just going to follow order of operations since we don't have variables. So negative 21 plus 12 is negative 9. And then we have negative 9 times 5 plus 9. So multiply first, negative 45 is 5 times negative 9. Plus 9, they are opposite signs, so we keep the sign of the bigger number, that's a negative. And then 45 minus 9 is negative 36, which is what we started with. We know we are correct. Okay, so that's just checking our work. And I'll write that up above here. Okay, now the other way we can do this is look at the number outside of the parentheses. So we have a 5 here. What we would want to do is divide everything by that 9. Before we begin, we'd want to have this part all by itself. So we do need to get rid of this plus 9 and move it to the other side first. So we want to have the number that is right next to the parentheses, and then that set of parentheses all by itself on one side of the equal sign. So negative 36 minus 9 on the right side would be negative 45, okay? Now, to get rid of this parentheses, this means multiply the 5 times the parentheses. So the opposite, we're going to divide both sides by 5. And when we do that, 5 divided by 5, well then this 5 outside the parentheses goes away, and we just have 3x plus 12 equals, and then negative 45 divided by 5 is negative 9. And then once you get here, it's a two-step equation. So we want to subtract, get rid of the constant first. We get 3x equals negative 21. And then we have 3 times x, so do the opposite, divide by 3, and we get x equals negative 7. Okay, notice we get the exact same answer, so I'm not going to check my work again because we already did that in this problem over to the left. But there are just two different ways of solving. Totally your preference. Doesn't matter which way you solve as long as you're using one of these two methods. Okay, let's go to the back side then. We have a couple more. I'm going to do 2 more with you and then let you do the last 6 on your own and see how you do on those. So, first step, we see a number right up against parentheses. We want to distribute that negative 7. So negative 7 times 5x, we get negative 35x. Now a negative 7 times a negative 8, notice there's a minus in front of that 8. So where this is going to switch to plus 56. And that equals 196. And then our goal is to get x by itself. So we will subtract 56. That will go away. Negative 35x equals 140. And then divide by negative 35. Don't forget that negative in front of the 35. That's how we get a negative divided by negative, so we get a positive. Now 140 divided by negative 35, we do get a negative, and then 35 goes into 140 4 times. So x equals negative 4. Okay? And we could check our work. Negative 7, 5 times, oops, I apologize, times negative 4 minus 8, and we're trying to see if that equals our 196. So 5 times negative 4, we get negative 20 minus 8 inside the parentheses. Negative 20 minus 8 is negative 28. And then we'll do that times negative 7. We know it's going to equal a positive. 28 times 7. We get 56. 7 times 2 is 14. Add your 5, so we get 196. and 96, which is what we started with. I keep telling you guys, yes, it does take some time, but checking your work, I know for a fact that answer is correct. Okay? And one more, we've got distributive again. If you want to see that other method, the number right next to the parentheses, it's on the left side all by itself. So we could divide by 5, divide by 5. That would go away. And we get n plus 3 equals -3. And then to get n by itself, we just need to subtract 3. So n equals -6. Okay, so that's the second method where we can divide by that number out front and then check our work. Replace n as -6 and see if this turns out to -15. So -6 plus 3 is -3. And 5 times -3 is -15, and that's what we started with. We know our answer is correct. Okay, and I'd like you to pause your video and check the rest